Kim Winder is the indie comic artist of the webcomic The RedDot, which follows her character Dot and her sentient and her living, breathing This is gonna be a tough video. Listen, while companies like to pretend that the internet is divided into family-friendly / brand-safe content and the unmentionable side, we all know that it's mostly the gray area stuff that gets the most attention and success. The stuff that's not necessarily not safe for work, but you also wouldn't want to be caught with it at work either. And this gray area is where artist Kim Winder operates when posting her comics online. Her webcomics seem unassuming, like they'd tackle slice-of-life shenanigans like countless other online comics, but don't be fooled. She can rank among the raunchiest internet artists this side of NSFW. But that's not entirely why she rocketed to popularity, boasting nearly 500,000 Instagram followers and thousands more across all her platforms. Believe it or not, putting spicy content out there isn't a recipe for instant success. No, she needed something else, some scheme to really get a foothold in the online space, and in 2018 she launched that plan, a grueling artist challenge that would change her online career forever, and I had a chance to talk with the woman, the myth, the legend, the RedDot herself. So, I'm Aura from Zombie Comics, and this is a story about comics you probably shouldn't share with your mom. It's a story about Disney princesses, literally flirting with death, Ryan Reynolds, a New Year's resolution that changed a life, and a sentient, as she puts it, inner moral compass. This is the story of the RedDot. What better place to start than at the beginning? So, Dot started out by drawing wood. No, not that kind of wood.
It was the first day of kindergarten, and that's where I made like my first friend. They had a little drawing table, and I was drawing trees for God knows why. And this little girl sat next to me, and she also started drawing trees. And we just drew trees together, and they were probably terrible, but that's honestly the first one I can really remember. I know I was drawing before because I always had a thing for it, but who knows what they were before that.
Like a lot of artists, whether they're from the indie comic side of things or the professional animator world, she grew up on a steady diet of Disney films and Disney princesses. But she's admitted that her characters definitely have Tim Burton and Seth MacFarlane influences. But of course, when it comes to the content of her comics, it definitely is not Disney.
I think sex is funny, and growing up, I was in a very religious, conservative family where I never got the talk. Nothing to blame on my parents. Like, growing up, embracing my sexuality, I just thought it was fun. I definitely come from the generation of Simpsons, Futurama, Family Guy, Disney Renaissance, Far Side Comics, Garfield. I really think there was a heyday in the 90s, early 2000s, where cartoons for adults started to grow, but no one really realized it was meant for adults, so kids like me got introduced to that humor much earlier, and I love it. I think it's fun.
Whether it's the humor, the tone, the crossovers, even the very name of the comics themselves, the RedDot, is a reference to something, well, not sexual, something usually saved for discussion in The Talk. Yeah, no, if you thought the RedDot was a clever spin on Reddit, where she absolutely has a prominent presence, you'd be wrong, but you wouldn't be alone. Even her phone keeps asking if she meant to say Reddit.
What's silly is my phone will always change my RedDot to Reddit. I'm like, God, I've been using the RedDot name longer than Reddit. Like, I didn't start using Reddit until 2019 because I never was on it before. So my husband, he went to college for English and poetry, and he specialized in romantic feminism. Like, he's very accomplished, and I'm very proud of him. But when we were dating, we would talk about it a lot, and he made the line like, well, I'm a feminist. And I said, well, I'm a woman. And so after that, when I started the comic, I was making these little jabs at him with fake poetry and calling it by the RedDot. So it was more bespoke, just kind of poking fun at me having a period. And I thought it was perfect and just went from there.
These comics that started out as a way to poke fun at her husband would eventually morph into the raunchy, unhinged world of the RedDot. But not right away. The character of Dot is half stand-in for Kim Winder herself, but also a fully fictional character in her own right. That's kind of why I'm bouncing between her real name and the character name a bit more in this video. This sort of pseudo-avatar self-insert is pretty common in the online space. I don't care if you're talking about Eddsworld, Pizza Cake comic, or something mainstream like Jerry Seinfeld playing a fictional version of himself. It's a common thing to do. But Dot wasn't always meant to be the flagship character. Before there was Dot, there was Morbid Curiosity. A play on the saying that curiosity killed the cat, Morbid Curiosity resembles a feline Grim Reaper and is responsible for just as many unalivings. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Morbid Curiosity didn't just represent Winder's first attempt at an icon, they were the early focus of an undertaking. One that would last her an entire year and redefine her place online.
Viva la Resolution.
New Year's Eve 2017. The ball drops, fireworks go off, and everyone swears their solemn vows to hold fast to their New Year's resolutions. And Dot was no different. Like a lot of people, she suffered from a chronic condition of severe dabbling. The sort of, ooh, a shiny new hobby, and then abandoning it far too quickly.
I'll get into anything and I'll go hardcore for maybe a few weeks and abandon it. And I decided for my New Year's resolution in 2018, I was going to stick to a hobby. And because I was always like drawing, I have plenty of old sketchbooks, doodles, stuff like that, and never really got better. I went to school for graphic design, but it was really more logos and boring shit. I didn't do fun stuff. So I decided I was going to stick to drawing every day, and to keep myself accountable, I'm going to post it on social media, and it kind of just took off after a few months.
For anyone who's made a New Year's resolution, they can tell you how difficult it is to realistically keep it up through the entire year. But Winder was determined. She had the name she would publish under, and so she uploaded her artist avatar. Yep, this is technically the first rendition of Dot, but like I said earlier, she wasn't really meant to be the main character of the comics. And that's where Morbid Curiosity came in. He was meant to be like Death's cute companion, but he didn't catch on as well and eventually faded out. But while this character would stick around for a few comics and even have their own version of the usual Reaper in Morbid Obesity, early versions of Dot would quickly take over by around April 2018, and she would quickly be joined by a wild cast of characters, including literally just Death himself. And the entire reason for his inclusion, well, without going into personal details or getting this video struck down by the YouTube gods, Winder had been in a very dark place years prior.
I think Death was the first recurring. The flirtation with Death was too funny. I was years after that happening, so I just thought it would be fun to flirt with Death and have him in a comic and play with that. And then what followed after was Gary. He was actually a parody of Beauty and the Beast, because I thought it would be edgy and funny if there was a object in the castle that didn't want to go back to being human. And what better than a... In my opinion, like, what's the most f***ed up thing? Because of course your mind goes to a toilet or something like that, but like the naughtiness of a... Like, why did the Beast have a in the castle to begin with? So I made a comic about that, and then it just kind of rolled into a recurring thing because I thought Gary looked cute. After that with Gary, I had a comic called Nightstand Confessions, where it's just him laying in a nightstand drawer saying, you know, I'm actually really claustrophobic. And then him and Dot started having comics together. Like, I just fully decided, you know what? Gary's going to be my best pal. And we're just going to go full into the sex stuff because I like that the most. I think that's the most fun, and I like being cheeky. And then I threw Satan in, I don't even know where.
Oh, hey, I know that one. Because I researched these topics until I know them harder than their own creators. The earliest appearance I could find of Satan in the RedDot comics was around August of 2018, in a comic where Dot is kicked out of heaven for her spicier content. But more recent followers are probably asking about one of the most recurring characters, Hub, based on Winder's real-life husband.
And then Hubs wasn't really part of the comic until a little bit later. I actually had a sub called Hernando that kind of looked like my husband. Once people realized I was married, I switched out Hernando for Hub because it didn't feel right. So I kind of retired that character. And
there were a few other characters that would pop up from time to time, like the little scruffy dog Charlie. Dot would continue plugging away at this 2018 resolution, gaining a little bit of notoriety and celebrating her first 500 followers on Instagram in June, but that fall, things were about to get crazy. And shockingly famous.
Oh my.
George Takei.
It's pronounced Takei.
If you don't know him from Star Trek, Mulan, or Kubo and the Two Strings, then you'll probably recognize him as Ninja Sensei Hiroshi from 2008's Ninja Cheerleaders, which is a movie that apparently exists and you can find on his filmography. He's one of those actors famous enough to just play himself when he cameos on The Simpsons, but not famous in the way that he's constantly in those random editorial stories you see everywhere. Why am I telling you all this? Well, like every famous person, George Takei has his own website with a surprisingly large volume of visitors. Visitors that, when they see something on the site, they feel inclined to check it out. Things like featured webcomics.
George Takei, his website, made an article about me, and that's kind of when I blew up. I had no idea until I got a whole bunch of phone calls and texts. I didn't even know George Takei had a website at that point, but, you know, I know him, love him, and then when I realized, like, oh, crap, okay, I've seen these articles before, and it was really neat. I kind of screamed. When I say blow up, I mean blow up for me. It's someone I met or knew in high school, haven't talked to since graduation, is sending me a Instagram message like, oh my god, I just saw your work. How have you been? I'm like, thanks for coming back. Still drawing trees? No.
Thanks to that October 2018 article titled "We Can't Get Enough of This Artist's Very Adult Comics," things really started picking up for Winder. They snowballed through the rest of the year. She started uploading more frequently and her comics got more and more attention. And by the end of 2018, she was solidly established online. I mean, getting attention from a huge established name is a big deal and gives you instant credibility. Please subscribe and watch more videos. But this wasn't even a one-time occurrence for Winder. Like that thing with Ryan Reynolds. You know, the guy everyone knows from that superhero movie. Green Lantern. So, that thing with Ryan Reynolds. He's done a lot outside of acting, and I'm sure you're very aware of it if you've seen those million Mint Mobile ads pop up. But he was also involved in gin production, namely aviation gin.
I made a comic for Aviation Gin when Ryan Reynolds owned it, and he shared it on his Instagram stories. Holy, the drawing looks like shit. Like, this was years ago, but he still shared it. I'm like, all right, I'm done. I hit the top, guys. I use the phrase a lot, a shameless plug, because there's a pun, but it's true.
Every time a name bigger than you shares your stuff, suddenly thousands and thousands more people are exposed to you. And these things only help to boost the RedDot comics more than she could ever imagine. So yeah, while Ryan Reynolds was gearing up to co-star with names like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Gal Gadot, he took the time to shine a light on the RedDot comics. But Winder wasn't just getting in with the folks in Hollywood. No, she'd get a chance to rub elbows with one of the biggest names in webcomics, Cyanide and Happiness. For those of you who don't know, first off, I'm shocked you managed to reach a channel about webcomics without ever coming across Cyanide and Happiness, but they've been around since 2005, making comics and animated shorts featuring dozens of recurring characters, but most notoriously Green Shirt and Blue Shirt in just some of the funniest and raciest jokes on the internet. They expanded way beyond comics to include an entire connected animated universe, card games, video games, and more.
We shared a booth, so it just turned out with circumstance they were going to share it with like their video game partner or something, and they had to back out, and they asked if anyone wanted to join in and share a booth with them, and I'm not too far from San Diego, so I jumped on that as quick as possible, and I got to sell my own shit by being right next to them, and having my name recognized next to their name was pretty cool, because I've been watching their comics since high school. Rob, I got to meet Rob in person, but Chris and Dave, they're also lovely. I've talked to them, and that was an experience. My first Comic-Con was San Diego Comic-Con, so you watch people walk past and they're like, oh, that's Cyanide and Happiness, or like, oh, I love these guys. And it was just so neat. And then just the slightest of ego boost when someone came to the booth and were like, oh, are you here to buy C&H merch? Because I agreed to do that. Like, I knew I had an opportunity. I'm like, I will work the booth. I will sell the shit out of your guys' stuff. And they have good stuff, obviously. But when someone's at the booth and they're like, actually, I'm here to see the red dot, I'm like, what? Like, oh, okay, thank you. And I cry. I cried several times. Probably made people uncomfortable, but...
After catching the attention of Ryan Reynolds, Cyanide and Happiness, and all these big names, Winder seemed utterly unstoppable. Well, no one gets big on the internet without a bit of drama. The worst accusation that an artist can get hit with is plagiarism. Well, okay, maybe not the worst, but it's definitely not something you want to come your way. And Winder was hit with exactly this.
I've had instances where I've made a comic that are very similar to someone else. I think the last one was Extra Fabulous. He does his own thing, and I love his stuff, but I had a comic very similar to his where the punchline is, you let your guard down, as in you let your security guard feel bad about himself.
I can't believe Buzz forgot my birthday. I thought he was my friend. Yo! How did you get past my security? You let your guard down. Oh shit! Tommy's birthday was today! Tommy! Tommy!
I did a joke similar to him, and they're like, you owe him an apology, or did you steal this? I'm like, I had no fucking clue, and I see all of his shit, so I'm so sorry. And I deleted the comic, and I felt awful about it, too. There's very few original ideas left. For the most part, somewhere, there's going to be someone with the exact same idea.
Over at Marvel Comics, they have a character called Man-Thing. DC Comics has Swamp Thing. It seems like a clear case of one of them ripping the other off, but nope, these two near-identical characters debuted within weeks of each other. If it can happen to the largest comic producers in the world, well, sometimes two people just have similar ideas. And this wasn't even the only time that Winder found herself in this position. But when so many people online are cranking out comic after comic, there's bound to be overlap. And Winder puts out a lot of RedDot comics. Naturally, due to her comic, you'd think the drama surrounding her would involve the promiscuity of her characters. But that's not the case.
The sex side, that's died down a lot. I think people are like, okay, she's just all the time. We can't shame her for that because she doesn't give a and they're right, I don't. And with the blowback, with people getting upset that I'm not always doing comics all the time, it's just because I've never given myself a parameter on what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. That was part of me keeping the New Year's resolution going. Like, I'm not going to put myself in this little box. So I guess the biggest pushback is like, why is she not horny 24/7? Why the is she making an emotional comic about her dog? You know? And that's fair because you follow something, you want to see something. I don't like having to force myself to do something all the time because it gets boring and stale and there's only so many stories you can tell. And I don't have a planned story anyways. It's just, what am I feeling today? And I'm going to draw it.
Ask any online creator and they'll tell you just how much flack they get for existing and being popular. As Hollering Elk put it in my interview with her, most of the online harassment just want a reaction out of you. In fact, there's tons of behind the scene things in my other indie comic artist interview videos, so if you like this video, you'd probably love the rest I got on this channel. But Winder has her own method of dealing with internet trolls, and that's to essentially kill them with kindness. She just takes things in stride. So between her 2018 New Year's resolution and famous friends propelling her to new heights, the only question left is, what's next? A lot of these interview videos end with the artist talking about their plans for a graphic novel or to pursue traditional print comic routes, and Kim Winder has definitely had it on her mind, but for now, she's plenty content to just keep on writing things out as they are.
Yeah, I would have to be self-published, and I haven't focused on that. I should probably find a focus to grow, but I've been in such a comfortable place doing what I'm doing and dabbling in animated shorts for like TikTok, YouTube, and working on that. I'm enjoying what's going on here and like growing online. Yeah, I'm vibing right now, but there is the back of my head thought like you need to grow or you will die, which is true for the internet. You need to diversify, you need to find new niches that haven't been filled. and it can be a little bit overwhelming. Because I also feel like I'm not big enough to sell books. It's just my personal feeling.
Even if she thinks she's not big enough to sell books, she was fully successful in funding plushies of both Dot and Gary. When you get down to it, fame is pretty relative. A YouTuber can have 1 billion subscribers, an eighth of the world's population, and you can still walk down the street and find plenty of people who've never heard of them.
When I started forever ago, I never thought it would be this. Like, I never thought it would be a full-time job. You all hope that something will get big and you'll get recognized, but I didn't think it would be anything sustainable at all. And the fact that it is cool.
She never expected to reach a point like this. In fact, one of her earliest comics that I found was lamenting the fact that it was pretty likely that she would just stay obscure, that she'd plug away at these comics for years and only gain a small following, if that. And, well, look at her now. You can find her across every social media platform, from Instagram to Twitter to Facebook to TikTok, and she's getting her own YouTube documentary, video, and interview. So, for all the aspiring comic artists out there, just keep doing what you're doing. You never know who might be reading. Even the Scott Pilgrim author snowballed his way from indie webcomic artist to having a massive multimedia franchise. What? It's only natural I'd end this video with a shameless plug.